We saw that the Senate passed the $95 billion package sending aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, right? It was, there it is right there. Biden signed the bill, I believe, last week, April 24th to be exact, $26 billion specifically to Israel. Of that amount, I think 19 billion exactly went to Israel, and 9, 7, somewhere in that range went to humanitarian aid to what's going on in Gaza. So I've actually brought in our friend Connor, because we're going to follow the money a little bit, especially what's going on domestic money. But real quick, you don't believe that U.S. should support Israel economically?
Support Israel economically, sure, but that's not what's happening in my opinion. What's happening is that the U.S. is giving credit to Israel. Imagine you have a gift card, and the only way that you could use that money is by buying weapons. However, it comes with conditions. The conditions are that Israel cannot sell any weapons or technology to any other country without the U.S.'s approval. It cannot buy weapons from any other country or intelligence without the U.S.'s approval. And so what we see is us being dependent, and more aid means more dependency on the United States, which means more of an ability for U.S. to push foreign policy onto Israel. In the 80s, Israel tried to develop the Lavi program, which was for it to develop its own fighter jets, for Israel to be independent and to create its own source for something that it truly needs. And what did America do? They quickly came and shut that down because they wanted Israel to be dependent on their own fighter jets. So I'm welcoming of a relationship with the United States. I grew up in this country. I'm very appreciative of this country. But I would like to see a relationship that is not toxic, not a relationship where America can come and tell us what we need to do or how they would like to see it, and in a relationship that if it's support, it doesn't come with conditions.
So would you agree that Israel and America are very strong allies?
Yes and no. I mean, I think if you today go to most Americans, although it is changing with the younger generation on a cultural level, more people are pro-Israel. That's because of the past. But I think in the policies, it's structured in a way to make it seem as if they're pro-Israel. But in its actions, it's really keeping us in this loop. I mean, the reason why Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2005, which even as a child, I was wearing the orange bracelet being against from it, that was Bush that forced Sharon to do that. Sharon, the prime minister as at the time, is the person who puts the Jews there. Why would he be the ones removing it? So there's been a lot of pressure from the outside, from the U.S., in my opinion, to allow this conflict to continue, really to sell weapons to both sides and profit. And so I would like a healthy relationship with the United States. I don't want Saudi Arabia or Qatar or the US or any other country coming into this situation. I would like Israelis and Palestinians to start speaking to each other. Right now, when we see on college campuses, is all the Palestinian students and their allies are speaking to the rest of the world, and all the Jewish students are speaking to the rest of the world, instead of speaking to each other. Actually, on the campus is the place where we have freedom of speech, where we can actually engage with one another, learn about the identity, aspirations, suffering, history, and future that we'd like to see from both peoples. And so my message is the only future that we'll see is one that is together, and it could only come when we start uniting and realizing that our aspirations do not actually contradict.
So foreign policy, foreign aid, you're pretty much against what's going on there. I believe, and I'm not as knowledgeable about this, Israel should be sort of grateful that America is its strongest ally. Without America, who knows what the hell can happen in Israel? We just saw Iran shoot hundreds and hundreds of drones and missiles at Israel. It cost, I think, $1 billion to defend that. So there is a case to be made for the military-industrial complex with the credits. You give all this money here, how many? $19 billion, but that needs to be used to buy more weapons. Totally understand that. You make a great case. That's foreign. Domestic. You talked about what's going on campus, engaging. It's not a lot of engagement going on. I see a lot of shutting down conversation. I see a lot of protest. I see what looks like sort of whiny babies about a very grown-up conflict, and then they're shutting down any types of conversation. But it doesn't seem to be organic. It seems to be organized. And that's why I brought one of Valuetainment's staff writers here. Connor's in the house. Connor, you've been doing some very good research on this left-wing dark money from George Soros. There's actually an image that I want to show, if we can show that. So anti-Israel protests at college campuses are led by activists revealed to be paid fellows of George Soros-connected groups with significant support from U.S. campaign for for Palestinian rights. Fellows are instructed to rise up and reject reform, receiving payments from $3,000 to $8,000 per individual. You've actually done sort of like a CIA web sort of connect the dots situation here with George Soros, Open Society, and everything there. If you can show the image here. But Connor, you and Shane, shout out to VT.com. Check out their articles there. What have you found here? What is actually going on? Follow the money behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's true. I felt like a crazy person going through this as I, made my strings and my notes to connect all the things together. But what this reveals is that the protests we have seen on campus in the last couple months are not as organic as the media would have us believe. They are, in fact, organized from the top down by some of the biggest money groups on the planet. They are structured from the top down, and then money is kicked from group to group until it ends up in the pockets of the people who are running these protests. Now, to your point, I am not trying to describe individual protesters as monolithic. They all have their own motivations for being there. Activism is an individual thing. They are doing what they think is right, depending on whatever their convictions are. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I am saying is that the organizations that put these things together have a direct pipeline that leads back to people at the very top. This is not a grassroots movement. So like Adam said, let's follow the money.
That's George Soros at the top. If you can pan out, thank you, Alejandro.
Yeah, I'll consult the screen right here. As you can see, George Soros is at the top. We're all familiar with who he is. Billionaire, Jewish, one of the most recognizable names in global philanthropy around the world.
Okay.
His political action group, his arm for doing things around the world, is the Open Society Foundation. That is, how he distributes his money to different organizations. A lesser-known subsidiary of the Open Society Foundation is called the Tide Center. This is a big nonprofit group that is sort of an umbrella corporation for a bunch of smaller activist groups, where they can get under the Tide Center and be covered from having to pay taxes. Its other groups include BLM and several other left-wing protest groups like that. This group has received hundreds of millions of dollars in government funding and donations. They have over $431 million in assets as of 2022. And by the way, a lot of our information on this comes from Influence Watch, which is a great resource for tracking how money is passed around to these organizations. So the Tide Center has all this money that comes from Soros and the Open Society Foundation. Then that money is passed on to a bunch of smaller groups, including one called Westpac, which is the Westchester People's Action Coalition. They support the BDS movement, the Green New Deal, and they've frequently clashed with the ADL and other Jewish rights groups over their perceived anti-Semitism. The Westpac group funds a group called Students for Justice in Palestine. That's who's carrying out most of the on-campus protests right now. They are responsible for the one at Columbia and a number of others. That group is also affiliated with a group called American Muslims for Palestine, allegedly at least, and their finances aren't disclosed, but they do receive directly and credit Westpac for a lot of the money they have been able to use. For Columbia specifically, the Students for Justice in Palestine partnered with a group called Jewish Voice for Peace, which is a ostensibly Jewish organization that is, again, partnered with a bunch of anti-Israel activists. And they receive, again, millions of dollars, not only from the Open Society Foundation, but also from the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. And those two groups also fund the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights.
So here's what I want to know, Connor. And look, I'm trying to connect all these dots here.
It's a lot of information.
Yes,
quickly,
it's a lot of information, and I appreciate
there,
this. Thank you. So you're connecting these dots. Here's what I got. These protests on college campuses. Columbia, Cornell, Minnesota, Texas, California, USC, Emory, Atlanta. If I'm just a normal person, I'm just, these students really care. They really care about what's going on. But the reality is, what you've just informed us, is that they're not organic. They're completely organized.
Well,
by George Soros
I
and
said, I
left-wing
can't
money.
necessarily say the people don't care about it.
No, they
but
care clearly.
The people organizing
Yes.
the individual students.
And you brought up a good point.
interests
Why do
elsewhere.
they all have the exact same colored tents? Because they're buying in bulk, yes?
Yeah, you buy in bulk, and that's how you get all the same things. It's,
Okay,
it's sort
and
of like
I'm definitely
these other
not
groups.
saying that those college kids, and I kind of feel like you'd be out there protesting for this. Respect, they believe in this, kind of, because there's also tons of people going out and interviewing these people. They're like, what do you mean river to the sea? They're like, yeah, I have no clue what river or what sea. I have no clue what BDS is. I have no clue about apartheid. I just don't want a war. Who the hell wants a war? Nobody. Well, Hamas did. But here's the last point that I want to understand about Soros. What is their purpose? What is their motivation? You know, George Soros is claimed to be Jewish. I think he just is way more politically or ideologically motivated than religion. I actually don't think he has any religion. I think he has a God complex or a Messiah complex. I think he wants to see an open society, open borders. But in summary, what do you think George Soros and this left-wing dark money actually want to see?
I think it is more about anti-Western sentiment than it is about Judaism, Israel, Palestine, any of that. It is about dismantling things here. So, in this debate, we've seen, the Israeli side, the pro-Palestine side. What I'm presenting a little bit here is the American side of things, of people who are, kind of standing at a distance from it, trying to figure out where we fit into this.
Yeah.
And what that means is that there are interests funding both sides of it, and both sides don't care about the American side. That one side or the other wants us to take a stand on it and get involved at the other's expense. And that's where the problem comes in. It's more about harming America, at least with this pipeline of funding, than it is about helping anybody else.
Got it. Thank you, Connor. Check out his articles on VT.com. Whoa. If you like that one, click right here to watch the full SOSCAST. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.